Good afternoon and welcome to another week of Let's Talk Relationships. So this week we're going to be looking at decoding faces with the face whisperer known as Adrienne Carter. Welcome, Adrienne.
Hello, nice to be with you this afternoon, Gurjit.
Thank you. Just to give you a bit more context of who Adriana is, she's been at the forefront of methodologies and technologies related to decoding our faces. Now, primarily, she's worked with retailers and manufacturers as well as commercial people. And really, in that setting, it's been about negotiations and relationships between buyers and sellers. You know, it's not just about a man's world and a negotiation behind deals. Actually, it's about how to build relationships and reading people's faces. What we call the non-verbal communication, the things that are never said, but it's kind of like I call it a gentleman's agreement. And then latterly, Adrienne's also been doing a lot of publications for some of the media, been on hand to analyze situations, faces, and say what the real meaning is behind what some of the photographs that we've been seeing in the world of media. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
This afternoon, we're going to be looking at or talking about relationships because Adrienne and I met about, 5-6 years ago, again in a work setting. And I just remember speaking with you and you said, oh yeah, you're able to tell what a person is potentially thinking just by the look of them. So I thought, do you know what? This is probably still even relevant even today in the setting of just generic relationships. So how has this technology come about? How did you go about developing, what you essentially call the face whisperer, or the emotions and behavior that sits behind all of this?
So I've always been interested in people. Ever since a young child, when I look back of what sort of lit me up and how I've most enjoyed spending my time, it's always with people. 20 years ago, when my children were very little, I wanted to work still. I wasn't very good at being a complete stay-at-home mom, but I did also want the freedom of not being tied to a 9 to 5. And someone said to me, why don't you go into market research? It's like, I'd never even heard of market research. So I promptly looked into it and absolutely loved it, because I was a freelance qualitative interviewer. I'd meet so many interesting people. And for me, it was all about understanding why they do what they do. And through a series of different sort of life tracks, how it takes you, I ended up as an expert on facial expressions of emotion, and also how people may feel but don't always say how they feel. So I use that in market research very successfully around the world, worked in over 20 different countries with global brands to help them understand the relationship between, as you said, negotiations, but also their consumers, their shoppers, their audience. How do we build that relationship? Because that's a really important relationship. Why do people buy, or why people don't buy? And that sort of got me thinking, that's in every aspect of our life, that relationship. Why do people buy into someone or not, or into a product or into a service? And it's all about the relationship. And oftentimes in those relationships, we don't always be aware of what's really going on. So 5 years ago, I started my own business and ended up back in market research again for a couple of years. I have now successfully escaped market research, mostly, for the most part. And as you said, I work with the media. I still work with global brands to help them with their advertising imagery, because faces are what we see around us all the time. No matter who you are, what you do, what relationships you have, a lot of it is based on faces that we just don't take notice of. And actually, one of my missions to do is to help people be more aware of the communications they give, and more aware of what they receive from other people. So I think it's
I was going to say, people give off that vibe as soon as you meet them, right?
Yes.
And we always talk about that 7% of the communication is done through tonality or words, but the 93% of it comes from every other aspect, including the face, which is so important. So when it comes to picking a partner, what's the first thing we see is the face.
Yeah,
and yet
absolutely.
we probably ignore the signals that come with it.
Yeah. And the other interesting thing, which I studied not quite as long ago, but about 8 years ago, is about how aspects of our personality also shine through our face. So that gives our face is sort of like the missed communication tool that is so important for relationships, because if you understand someone's personality and their emotional side of their life and their behavior, you've got a really good composite picture of that person and how best to communicate with them.
Wow. So how do you like decode the face? Are you literally like just scanning them? And if it's someone that we don't know, like if you take right now, I'm sure there's a lot of ladies that are dating during lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're into the virtual dating piece, then they're just going by the face. They're not able to know, because perhaps they're not meeting their partner regularly, or this new person that they're getting to know. How is there anything there that would how would they decode the face? How would they know
So
if this is a kind, loving person versus, what, red flags all over him? I better avoid this one.
yeah, so there's loads of information that you can decode, and some of it you are subconsciously aware of, and you are doing all the time, whether you are trained or not. We're all doing it. But some of the things to look out for, if they've got lots of laughter lines here, they're probably quite a fun-loving person. If they've got really deep grooves here and their lips sort of naturally turn down, they're probably a bit of a miserable old what's it.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry about that. You haven't. Deep grooves in the forehead. Our face is built up of 43 muscles. And like any part of the body, if you go to the gym and start working your arms out, you get big muscles in your arm. Same with the face. The muscles you use in your face do sort of develop their own patterns. So, I know someone who's got, I nearly said the name there, I thought that's not very appropriate. I know someone who's got deep grooves on their forehead. They're a worrier. Yeah. They worry all the time. Someone who spends their time being angry gets really deep grooves here.
Okay.
You need to always ask questions with this. This is one of the things that we spoke about, is this knowledge gives you the ability to ask really good questions. So these deep grooves could also be not the anger. They could also be someone who concentrates a lot, working close at a screen and is constantly doing this. So it's it's always worth checking what you're seeing. Is this person an angry person? Are they quick to react in a red flag way? Then they've probably got the really deep grooves there, unless they concentrate a lot in their day-to-day job. So there's lots of different ways of decoding the face, but the signs are always there if we know what to look for.
And is there particular ways in which we can, how do I put it? Look at a face and just know that this person isn't upset with me, but something else. Because often when we look at a face and we see someone angry, we are just naturally assuming, well, it's me. They're behaving like that and off being with me.
Yeah.
And is this like I totally agree with you. Don't just take something as face value, go and question it.
Yes, absolutely. And anger can also look very much like confusion. When I do my workshops and I put some example faces up and I say to people, what does this face tell you about this person? And half the audience will say, oh, they're really angry or cross about something. And the other half will say, oh, they look confused. Because anger and confusion, very similar when displayed on the face. And if someone's confused, that's a different response to anger. If they're angry at you, or you think they're angry at you, you might react with anger. Whereas if you think they're confused, oh, actually, I just need to explain a little bit more about what I'm talking about, and it'll all become clear. So if we understand what's going on and ask the questions, are you feeling a bit confused now? Can I make this a bit more clearer for you? Or are you cross at what I've just said? Ask those questions to understand more. That's how relationships, for me, is the really important part, is asking questions.
Yeah, I guess we've all heard the expression of a face like thunder, which means you can look really annoyed and angry, but you don't say it.
No.
And I say, well, that's just you suppressing it. And, you're expecting the other person to know your problem, the typical, well, I don't know what's wrong, and anything I say, I better be mindful. And it puts somebody off from asking a question. I know how many times you use something really important you want to say to your partner, but you're so worried about their reaction that you constantly look at their face, judging their mood, that you just don't do it. Then when you finally do, it's wrongly or badly timed.
Yes.
How much of that how much can we pick up on the cues of the face of when someone's relaxed, they're in, how to put it, when's the right time to have that conversation that you can tell?
I don't think, I am, because it's what I do day to day, it's how I live and breathe, but most people aren't aware of what's going on, that there are clues they can pick up. I think one of the things that people can do just to really sort of take them to the next level in their communications and relationships is to be more aware. What am I seeing? Oh, they look angry. Okay, think about the context they're seeing that face like thunder. Now isn't a good time, because they're angry about something else, so probably now isn't a good time. And it's about being more aware, I think, of what's going on for the other person and their context. You know,
Mm.
I think we forget a lot of the time that they've got stuff going on in their heads, like we've got stuff going on in our heads. But in our heads, it's much more sort of awareness is there, and I want to deal with this, and I want to sort this now. But actually, if we pick
Yeah.
the time by picking up the clues that people are always giving us, because we cannot not communicate. We're
Yeah.
communicating something all the
Yeah.
time. You know, you and I just sat here, we're communicating.
Yeah. I think it's the miscommunication
Yeah,
that's the challenge in a lot of this. And often you could be sat with your partner, and I certainly know for those that are in new relationships, or are at home with their partner during lockdown, and they're, how do I put it, they have this, especially single lady, I wouldn't say single ladies, but ladies that are in new relationships, where they have this constant worry of,
yeah,
is he cheating on me? Is he talking to somebody else? What's he doing on his phone? He's not paying attention to me. And
yeah,
their facial expression gives it away that they're insecure, and their partner might be as cool as a cucumber.
yeah.
And then it's their behavior that they're judging them, but he's being shifty and he didn't answer my question. And, how does that play out in terms of a facial expression?
For me, I always say to my clients is, what else could this mean? So if you think they're being shifty, I mean, they could be being shifty, but no two ways about it. But what else could it mean? And I think in relationships, we judge from our own perspective. Many years ago, I trained as a counsellor and a psychotherapist, and we've got biases. If we've been cheated on in relationships in the past, in a new relationship, we may be looking for the signs that this person is going to cheat. And sometimes they become self-fulfilling prophecies because we pick a similar type and, they do cheat. But it doesn't have to be like that. And if we become aware of our own biases, particularly in relationships, and what we expect and what we want, then we can sort of go beyond those miscommunications by sort of thinking, right, is this my bias and my projection onto this, or is this actually what's happening? What's real and what's false?
Yeah. And do you think there is a way through the face to tell if someone's loyal, if they're a keeper, or, she's, how do I put it? They're a victim, like how, because I think there is something in the way that someone carries themselves and the way they present themselves. I truly believe that. And when I say
Yeah,
present themselves, I don't just mean in physical appearance, I mean in their demeanor.
yeah,
If they're shy versus if they're confident,
yeah,
whether they are openly being vulnerable to sharing information about themselves, or whether it feels like you're at the dentist and you're having to pull at the information.
yeah.
I think that says a lot. And I don't know if that's more around the personality. And again, I think the obvious signs that I usually look out for is the tight jawline. Some of the simple things where people can be, you can just see it in their lips that they're very
Yes,
pissed,
yeah. So
like
the
it's
face,
painful watching
yeah.
them.
So emotionally and personality wise, there's so much information from the face. So someone who's got a really strong jawline and a wide face, they're more naturally self-confident. Someone with a narrower face can learn self-confidence, but it doesn't come as easily to the person with the wide face. So from a relationship side, whether they're a keeper or not, I don't think we can judge that from the face, but we can judge from their behaviour. And what I always say with is, when someone's behaviour changes, if you're getting on great with someone and you're maybe in a new dating and you're online dating and their behaviour changes, that for me is the big red flag. Because what's caused that to change? What's happened? And with any body language, I talk about body language quite a bit as well. And, we talked about it, folded arms can mean absolutely nothing. It could just mean, I often sit like this, it's comfortable. Doesn't mean I'm feeling defensive. However, if someone's behaviour changes, if that's not their normal behaviour to sit like that and it changes, I'd want to know why they've changed. So there is no one sign of lying, there is no one sign of anything really. But when people's behaviour changes, that's for me, that's when it becomes interesting. It's like, oh, okay, now what's changed for this person? Why have they changed towards me? Why have they changed their behaviour? Why are they sitting like that when they don't normally sit like that? What's going on?
Yeah.
So that's for me, I think, is the most interesting part.
Yeah, and I guess it comes back down to things like when they're distracted or not paying attention. Sometimes people will often, like clients will often say, but I come home and I'm busy and I just want to sit with him and he's just staring at the screen. And it's like, oh my God, am I not interesting? Am I not
Mm.
you know, and we make it about ourselves.
Yes.
And like you said, we're not actually taking on board for the other person. We don't know what day they've had, what they're actually thinking, and they're going through a roller coaster of their emotions just to come back to peace, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. All this stuff about the face doesn't make us a mind reader, but what it does help us to do is to sort of be more aware of what's going on for other people,
Yeah.
more aware of how they might be feeling, and what am I giving off? You know, have I got one of my favourite phrases is "resting bitch face." You know, women of a certain age, when they're a bit angry or concentrated, they get this resting bitch face. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're mad with everybody. It just means perhaps they're concentrating. But if we're
Yeah.
aware of what we give out, because that affects how other people then treat us. So it's I think it's really interesting for relationships.
Yeah. I also have this view though that, you know, people that smile more often or they're just bubbly and, you know, and do they struggle? And I don't want to bring it like, you know, perhaps we do bring another topic in like mental health. Like, does that mean they're genuinely more able to cope with life? Or is that putting on a front? We know so many celebrities that have been comedians and whatever, and then have literally, you would never have known behind the smile, behind the face, that there was so much trauma going on for them.
So this is a big subject, Gurjit, a big subject, and it's one of my favourite subjects. Smiling is there are genuine smiles and there are posed or fake smiles. And understanding the difference between a posed smile or a fake smile and a genuine smile is where I think the true um, communication really comes in. Because a fake smile, you know, you talked about celebrities that end up taking their own lives. And, you know, some of the videos, I've got some of the videos actually, if anyone wants to see any of them, but some of the videos that the families have released afterwards of the person smiling and laughing, if you know the face, that person wasn't really smiling and laughing. You know, people who are really anxious often spend their lives like this. And you say to them, you know, can you stop smiling now? And they can't do it because that smile is how they hide their anxiety and they find it really hard. So, knowing the difference between what is a fearful smile, an anxious smile, a genuine smile, or a posed smile is actually really important, particularly if you're in sort of any therapy or coaching work, because knowing the difference between that helps you then see what's really going on. You know, I've worked with people that this anxiety smile, they literally cannot take it off because they're hiding
Yeah.
behind the fear and the anxiety that overwhelms them. So the way they get through life is doing this all the time. But you'll see it doesn't ever reach their eyes.
Eyes, and that's where the real smiling comes from, is from your eyes. And if you're
Yeah,
genuine and if you're
yeah.
heartfelt and
So if
warm,
someone, if genuinely they're happy, you will see
yeah,
it written all over their face. Literally, the crow's feet that we, as ladies, sometimes we don't like, but actually they're good, in my opinion. They're good to keep. They show people. If you see that genuine smile, that person is genuinely happy because it's quite hard to do if you're feeling one way and want to put something over to other people to pretend. It's quite easy to see once you know what you're looking for.
yeah, yeah. And I guess a great example of that of the last few weeks during lockdown. Obviously, we talked about politicians a few weeks back with Cool Hair and emotional intelligence and how much they've been showing empathy and warmth and care. You know, that
Yes.
was the key word that was coming out, that they want to show to people they care. How much is that obviously expressed through the emotion of the face and the words that come with it, right? It's almost the two go hand in hand.
Absolutely. So, as humans, we are very good with no training whatsoever picking up when someone is being genuine or authentic. And I think, you know, when we've talked about Boris Johnson's statement a few weeks ago when he first came back after his coronavirus scare, he came across really, really well. And the TV actually asked me to analyse him, what happened during that. And he came across as authentic. People bought into it. His body language all matched the words he was saying and the intensity that he gave. So he came across really, really well. And I think as humans, no training whatsoever, just subconsciously we bought into that because he really, you know, he put across his genuineness of what happened to him and his empathy came across really, really well. Where on the other hand, we've seen other politicians, you know, I'm not a political commentator and I do try and avoid politics because I know it can be really divisive. But with Dominic Cummings at the weekend, when he was reading his statement, it was fine and he read it through. But when he started getting the questions, he was really defensive. You know, there was no empathy for other people. You know, it could have been a really easy fix this weekend with this media storm that surrounded his breaking the lockdown. It could have been an easy fix, hands up, I've done something, I broke the rules, it was really stupid of me, but my panic about my family took over and I wasn't acting right. I'm really sorry for the people that I've hurt and who have stuck to it rigidly. He didn't do that. He came across as defensive. He stuttered a lot. When you're telling the truth and how you really feel about something, it flows. You don't stutter unless that's your normal behaviour, which it isn't for him. It isn't his normal behaviour to stutter, and he was, and that's when the brain is processing information and trying to pick the information it wants to give. So it makes it really inauthentic, and it doesn't flow. And people pick up on that without any training whatsoever, easily.
What could we do as a person, though, that's, perhaps we're questioning our partner, where have you been today? And they're coming up, exactly in that same way of like quick thinking, but without accusing someone, because it almost gets turned back on you in an argument. And I've seen a classic cases of this where it comes back on you of going, they know they've done wrong, but I'll tell you what, I'll switch it up on you. And that's really difficult. And I know where I come from a certain place to what I say to people, but what would you give in that moment to someone that has just found actually it's exploded, but come back at them?
So there's one thing I would say with caution is we call it Othello's error. So I don't think you know anything about Shakespeare, but very, very, very briefly. What happened in that situation was I can't remember her name now. It's completely gone out of my brain. That's why I'm thinking my brain's not catching up with me.
It's okay.
What happened was, the guilty person the innocent person will often fear being seen as guilty. So if you accuse your partner of where have you been, and I know you didn't go there, they may look guilty. They may still be innocent, but may fear being seen as guilty. So it can be really hard to judge. As I said earlier, we're not mind readers. And it's about understanding when behaviour changes. And also, an innocent person can oftentimes feel really worried about being seen as guilty. And that's really hard to judge. And it's back to those questions, gentle questioning. You said you went there, but I actually know you went there. Is there anything more you'd like to add to that? You're giving people an opportunity to add, if they're innocent, the truth. And if they're guilty, they probably will go into a whole more load of lies. That's one thing with guilty people is they often talk quite a lot, not always, but they'll often go into lots and lots and lots and lots of unnecessary detail, trying to make you believe them, when actually the truth flows really easily.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a classic example of, when I call it the snowball effect. When one person says something, then the other person says something, but we're not actually listening to the communication that's happening. And we're looking at the reactions, and the frustration behind it. And that takes over versus the actual communication. And then the second thing that adds into that is the behavior. So from then on in, when you've had an argument with your partner, it continues on because you're going, well, you did that and you didn't drink my tree, and then you had dinner out, and you didn't talk to me when you come home, and then you spoke to me and it goes on and on and on.
Yes.
But you can bring it back and go, so what was the actual argument about? Because you're too busy reacting to the facial expressions and the behavior. Then you are really about, I want to understand the real argument. And when I get the argument, when I get your point of view, then I can do something about it.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. A really good way of putting it.
So where does someone go with that? Because how do we stop that in that interaction when it's happening, that snowball effect where we're like locked horns with someone?
I think it becomes from emotional awareness. What have I we call it encoding in body language. What have I just given off that now they're reacting to? And for me, it comes to awareness. Am I aware of what I'm giving out? And am I aware of what they're giving out to me? And actually, am I responding in the right way? Anger sometimes can hide fear. So when someone goes, in an argument, is the real issue underneath? Are they frightened about something? Is it to cover up fear? Because anger is very loud and in your face. And oftentimes, people don't like to admit they feel fearful. Fear is all about loss, fear of loss. Is that anger to cover up the fact that they're worried you might leave them? And back to that question, what else could this mean? So there are 7 universal facial expressions, and that means whether you're born in Birmingham, whether you're born in India, or even born blind, we show those 7 same facial expressions identically. Now, the triggers will be very different. The trigger for you for sadness might trigger happiness in me, might trigger contempt in somebody else, might trigger anger in somebody else, and disgust in somebody else. So the triggers will all be very, very different, but the way we show the emotion is identical. The muscle movements that we all use to show that emotion is identical. So being aware of people's triggers are different to ours. So my triggers are very different to your triggers. But the way I show that emotion is the same. So in an argument where you've got this backwards and forwards and the whole emotion thing has taken over, what are you actually seeing on the face? You might be hearing anger, but you might be seeing fear.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is really important for more people to understand about the face, because you get to really understand what's going on underneath. Because sometimes what's going on underneath is more important than what's being shown.
Yeah, and I think I feel like that is also heavily linked with why some of the cases around mental health, depression go undetected, because we're all going around going, I'm fine.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And nobody.
I've volunteered for 5 years with Samaritans, and the conversation you'd have with people, I'm not going to reveal anything confidential, obviously, but people would talk, and how are you feeling today? And they'd say, oh yeah, I'm okay actually, but by the tone of their voice, they're not okay. And gentle question gets them to open up. And at the end of the conversation, a lot of people would say, I felt suicidal, and now just talking has allowed me to, I feel so much better. Thank you for your help. Actually, I didn't do anything. I just listened and asked a few questions. So talking can really make a big difference to people in the right sort of setting. So if you've got relationship problems, is there a space to talk about things, and just with no judgment, with no agenda, just how can we talk? And same with mental health problems. People often don't really like to say what's going on for them, and it's about giving people space to open up in the right way with the right questions, not digging deep, but actually how do you feel about that? I can see you might feel a bit upset. Am I right? Do you feel upset about that? And that's what we can do by understanding the face. We can understand what's really going on, because people just don't often say.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things that certainly in the field that I've come from through my coaching of NLP and latterly a leadership program with Denmark and so forth, one of the things that I picked up on is that most of the time we just have a filter in which we're viewing people from. And when we look at that person, and every time we see that person, like you said, you talked about the 7 universal triggers there, that if you just choose, we're always seeing that person as they're grumpy, guess what? They're grumpy.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But as soon as you can shift yourself to go, actually, I have a choice if I want to see this person as happy, vibrant, whole, and humorous. Actually, that's when you start to shift them in the way that you perceive them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I don't wish to diminish anyone that's gone through abuse and domestic violence and everything else. We had this on a few weeks ago that it takes 37 occasions before a woman will pick up the phone. Something similar for men, that we will continuously play out the same scenario, drama, whatever you call it, until we've had enough. And I'm kind of like, being aware of this kind of work is so, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the knowledge of the face is not used anywhere near enough, and I don't do anything automated. It's all, when I'm coding faces, it's all manual coding. So I've got I'm coding muscle movements, but what did you say to me? There was something that was leading to. It was really interesting as well. Oh, I know what it was. So when you go to doctors,
can't read your mind, Adrienne. I wish I could.
Sorry. When you go to doctors, if you really understand faces and what emotions mean, and is being displayed, you could tell when someone's really in pain or not. So I had an instance a few weeks ago, and my friend said to me, "Oh, so much pain." And I looked and I thought, "You're not in pain even slightly. There's something else going on here." Because there's a configuration of the facial muscles that shows us pain. So this information actually changes lives by understanding when people are, you know, it's getting through to what's really going on. And I think that's really important. So I don't use the deception aspect so much. You know, I've had people contact me and said, can you tell me if my husband's cheating or not? And I probably could with some analysis on some video footage, but it's not where I really want to go with it. I really want to go building relationships rather than tracking relationships.
Absolutely. And look, a classic one for those, certainly in the Asian culture, where they live with other people. And, you know, I've heard it time after time after time, which is, you know, my mother-in-law has it in for me, you know, that look, just that look. And I even get some people with my mum, she gives me that look. And you're like, what look? You know, the one that you know that they're not impressed by you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but you're fearing it. And that gives that person that control and that authority to keep looking at you that way until you call them out on it or going, what have I done wrong?
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, you're mad?
No, in one of my workshops, I was talking about the facial expression of contempt, not content, contempt. And contempt's all about lack of respect for someone. And a lady in the audience, I saw her face change, and I said, are you okay? And we had a chat afterwards. She said, you know, I've just realised my brother has shown contempt to me my whole life. He feels he's better than me. So we talked about it and how it turned out. She lived in the UK in a small town. He'd moved to LA. He got this big job and this big lifestyle, and he felt quite superior. He was really pleased with what he's done. So I gave her some tactics and strategies. So the next time they had a video call, that she didn't feel, because she didn't know what she was picking up on. She just knew that she felt like that every time she'd had a video call with him. And I gave some tips and tricks, and I said to her, right, when he starts talking about this, you do this, and gave her some body language stuff to do. And he didn't know what hit him. And he wasn't being mean to her on purpose. He did just feel really proud of his lifestyle and quite superior to her. And same with the mother-in-law relationship, actually. The mother-in-law may feel, well, I know it all. I know what I'm doing. I've done this for 40 years and I can keep my family happy. So the young bride can often feel like, well, she hates me and she doesn't like what I'm doing. And it's not that the mother-in-law does hate her. It's just that she's showing this contempt. Not in a nasty way. It's just she does feel really proud of what she's achieved. And so that understanding that can actually change a whole relationship dynamic.
And do you think it's the jostling of position in the family? I usually call it the power struggle. You know, it's the moment where, you know, you've got yourself in the relationship, you've got your partner, then you've got extended family. And this is whether you live with them or not, but you're almost trying to stamp your ground.
Yes.
You know, mark your territory of going, this is my home and this is my way. And the other person's doing that.
Yes.
You know, and although it's never said in that way, but it's the face-offs, you know, every time you're at dinners and things like that, like, oh man, you know, how many times we've sort of seen that, people like drawing daggers at each other and so forth, and you're thinking, wow, that tells us more.
It's an easy fix because you know, if it's the mother-in-law, it could be the father-in-law. If it's that person who's doing that, it's an easy fix for the person who's feeling less than to actually display some different, and then we respond unconsciously to other people, and we can change the way we respond to that. Even like just feeling, actually, I know I'm not less than, I know I'm doing a really good job with my family, so I can sit tall. The person who's showing the superiority will change completely when the person stands up for themselves. Like, it just all happens, doesn't even need to be spoken about. I work with recruiters, and you know, I say to a recruiter, if you see high levels of contempt in an interview, don't hire the person, because that person won't fit in, because they don't need to build a relationship. Whereas in a family, if you're seeing high levels of contempt, it's okay, how do we build this closeness back? How do we make it work? Whereas in a job interview, you don't need to make it work, you hire somebody else. But in a family, it's really important to understand the undercurrents and how best to respond.
So just on that then, in terms of if you turn up to an interview, and we always say you've got to make a good impression, and I always think of that as there's saying the right things and there's doing the right things. And saying the right things, you know, they're like how to put textbook answers. You're supposed to say that, you're supposed to say that. And I think doing the right things is where you're bringing yourself to the interview.
Through. When someone's on their best behaviour, they're wearing a mask. But that mask does move. If you know what to look for, the mask moves, and you can see what's really going on. They may give textbook answers, but what's going on with the face and their body language and how they portray themselves and put themselves over will always leak through. There will always be clues as to what's really going on.
And do you think that how would you approach that situation? Obviously interview situation is very different. If you're found out that you're not able to do the job, they've got such things called as HRs that will sit down and mediate or support that person, say, right, here's your development plan, how do we get you moving? What do you feel that needs to happen in the home setting or in the relationship when you kind of realize, oh my gosh, the person I'm about to marry, not right, or I've been married for so many years, everything was hunky-dory in the beginning, and now it's like, I don't know this person.
Yeah. So, in relationships, I've been married for nearly 20 years, and we've had our ups and downs, and it's about making it work. So there have been times where I've thought, you're really annoying me. You're really annoying me. Now, is he being really annoying, or is it something going on with me? And what is it that I am feeling? And this emotional awareness of understanding your emotions. Sometimes I've caught myself pulling a face thinking, I didn't actually know I felt like that, because it happens so fast in our own brains. Think, actually, that wasn't really appropriate of me. And if I'm interested in building a relationship, which I am, and keeping my husband happy and him keeping me happy, that's investing in then, okay, I did this or I saw this. What do I need to do now to make this better for us?
Yeah. And do you feel like from that perspective then, yes, even I know relationships are recoverable.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they can be reset. That's what, I specialize in relationship resets.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to, I wouldn't want anyone watching this right now to think, what, it's all about the other person. So I've just got to judge them, watch them, observe their reactions. That's not what Adrienne and I are covering here. We're kind of bringing it back to yourself of like, how would somebody be able to first of all look within them at their facial expressions and how they're coming across? Because a classic is, and I used to hear it from somebody very close to me of going, my face just looks like this, like you called it the bitch resting face, but I'm always happy. I'm like, no, you're not. You don't smile. Yes, I do. And it's really hard because and it is about how you take the emotions from in here that you truly feel and place them out here so people really know how you feel.
So one of the things that I, when I've worked with one-to-one clients, one of the things I get them to do is to get really comfortable looking in the mirror. You'd be surprised at how many people don't feel comfortable looking at their own face in the mirror. And when their emotions change during a session, I'll say to them, go and look in the mirror, go and look in the mirror, go and look in the mirror. So they get to understand what their face is doing and showing to other people. Because it's all right feeling it inside, but if you don't know how to express it, you're losing a big chunk of information. So I think it's about, it's not all about them. It's not all about you. For me, it's all about 50-50. What am I giving? What am I showing? What are they giving? What are they showing? And really understanding to a deeper level. I tell people, go and get really comfortable with your own face and how you show emotion and what that means. Do you live your life fearful? Are you showing that constantly and not even aware of it? And I think that's really important.
Well, one person that we know gets constantly criticised for, who doesn't appear to show emotion, but we know there is a softer side to her, and I've certainly seen a lot more of it in the last few years, is Victoria Beckham.
Yes.
She's a classic where people would look at her, call it her face, cold exterior, poker face, what have you, and there's just no expression. Is that true?
She's very polarizing, I think, Victoria Beckham, because a lot of times she does pose for the cameras. That's her job. She does this posing. But I think she chooses to keep part of herself very private. She's in the public eye. She's got hundreds of thousands of followers. I think she does allow her softer side to come through sometimes, but she chooses when it happens. And I think a lot of the time she's very good at keeping the poker face and posing what she wants people to see. But then, like you said, other times she will allow people to see that, but it's very much on her terms, I think.
Yeah, I think, had, social media gives us some access, her Instagram account and so forth. But I just feel that gentler side, and certainly what her family post about her, just show the heart and the love of her. And I think that's really admirational. And then you just see her, and sometimes the humor comes through.
Yes.
Even if it's dry humor, and you're like, oh, she has a personality. Yes. And then there are other times, like you say, because it's so pokey, you're like, gosh, is she even happy?
Yeah.
you know, and that's really, really tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But again, I think she's quite clever with it. She chooses what she wants to put out there. She chooses when she wants to display how she really feels or not. I personally don't ever try. People often say to me, do you manage your own face? And no, I don't actually. I don't, you know, if I'm feeling happy or feeling sad, I just allow it all, because why not? Why not let people see how you really feel? And there are occasions, you know, when sometimes in a corporate setting, I do go into a bit more poker face, a bit more professional, because that's appropriate for that situation. We all do it. We all, you know, adapt who we are and what we put out there in different situations, but we will always leak through who we really are.
Absolutely, absolutely. It has been an absolute joy speaking with you. For anyone watching, how can they get hold of you if they wanted to find out more around facial expressions and what they could do to improve themselves?
Okay.
I would say improve, but you know, decode their own face.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a Facebook business page, which is Adrienne Carter Limited. I've also got a Facebook page, Adrienne Carter, which I'm happy for people to join me on. Instagram, Adrienne Carter. LinkedIn, Adrienne Carter. My website is adriennecarter.com. And if you put in the Face Whisper or my name on Google, you'll find me somehow. But yeah, anybody's got any questions or wants to know a little bit more, give me a shout. I like talking, as you can probably tell.
Well, I was going to say, and if you didn't know, this is Adrienne Carter.
Yeah.
Adrienne, it's been an absolute joy to have you on, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. It certainly provoked some thinking for me around, you know, like you said, just being mindful of yourself, becoming more aware.
Yeah.
I think it's about, like you said, befriending yourself in the mirror. You know, get to know that person first.
Yes.
You know, and get to know what you're putting out, because that will give you a sign of what you're getting back.
Yeah.
And in your third piece, which I absolutely love, which is question, don't take it as face value.
Yes.
You know, so many of us take things personally that probably have nothing to do with us. And we just put ourselves in that position thinking it's always about us when it probably has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, ask some key questions. Again, if you want some support and help with that, Adrienne's just shared her socials and where she can help. You've got myself here on the main page. You can DM me, or if you are a female and you would like to join the free private group, it's called the Gurjit Kaur Rana group. Please do join in there. I do tend to share a little bit more about what I do and why I do it and how I can help you. But needless to say, thank you so much for joining me this lunchtime, Adrienne. It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much. And I will speak to you guys possibly next week. So see you soon. Thanks, Adrienne.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.